what literally happens here is that this artificial Tron-based world that people are talking about is the world that they're being transmuted into now, and I'll explain how that happens. It's just like the indigenous says, I don't speak men very well. The indigenous say that there's a chakra that connects us to Earth. And that chakra has a cord to it, like ethereal cord, that's something like our umbilical cord that's cut from our mother. And it allows us to be connected to Earth's communication grid, which is broken, by the way. And then we'll talk about that, of course, much later in different programs, and I've definitely talked about that on the show. But what has happened to the Western state of mind is that this cord is cut. And instead, they're connected by some type of hive mind neural network that connects into an individual and begins to program them. And what that has programmed them to believe is that all of their power has to come from something, one, external, rather than understanding, and also something now inorganic. And we'll talk about this. Because what happens is that when I say I want to communicate with, and I say who I want to communicate with, in this world, this Tron-based world, a person goes and picks up the phone and they dial the number and they say, hey Todd, what's going on? How are you today? Oh, I'm doing really good. But in the actual world, when you want to communicate with someone, you link right through their mind. And this is why in this world that we're using now, where people's abilities have been turned off, that sometimes they call someone and the person's like, hey, man, I was just thinking about you, and it's funny that you called. It's because not only can you just send the signal that, hey, I'm thinking about you, but you can also send the whole message. But this is all based on how powered up your system is. So what also has been going on is that I feel that there's been a breach in psychic security. And I want to put this very clear. People need to understand that our minds are very powerful things, and our psyche is a very powerful thing. And generally, it remains protected. But in this time that we're living in which there's been a lot of propaganda, a lot of frequency, a lot of different things used to penetrate into our subconscious, and even by individuals who have used that to sell macaroni and cheese, that this is cause where the mind has been intruded upon and left gates open and left doors open into the mind. And what these doors do when someone accesses them is it begins to change how you think, feel, believe, etc. And so what society has been manipulating into is a perpetual cycle of death, where they've been made to think and believe that there's these limitations going on. And what they call this in these higher levels of knowledge in secret societies, they call that squaring the circle. Putting a wall around a spirit type being that we're calling the humanoid, mind, body, and soul. So what happens when this begins to take place is that there's a limitation perceived by the individual that is here, like the person is in here. And the reason why I said there's been a breach in a person's psychic security is because you have all these individuals running around and they're initiated. And this is going to be difficult to see, but I'll probably put a copy up of it later on at the end of the show as a still. And but again, this is just a pre-show. So because these individuals are initiated into something that most people don't know about, but I do. I know about all initiations that exist on this planet. Because my purpose here is to bring light into the darkness. What happens with true light is that it begins to expose what has been done in secrecy. That's all light does. It chases darkness into the farthest corners. And what is darkness? Darkness is ignorance. Darkness is sin. It's the idea of not knowing. Okay? So when some people that know come along, they bring this grand revelation and grand awakening to everyone. And it really happens. And all the programming that has been pushed here is for that anytime an individual says that they're that, then they want to crucify it. Because the program is set to crucify anyone that comes with a higher level of knowledge through their misconception of who they believe as their God. The word God is connected to the word God. This is Kabbalah. A G is a J is a Y is a I. So all you have here, this will serve later on because we're going to pull apart a couple of the gods really briefly. But this is about fire. Fire is about consumption. Fire is about carbon. Fire is about 666. because what it does is it breaks down anything that it burns into itself. So what we're dealing with here is much more expansive than many of the people that are delivering information in the occult world right now, or even laying on, because many of them are under a trance. In fact, many of us have been influenced by a trance, and it's important to understand how to break that. But it's also important to understand that they missed very few people with the trance. Who are they? They, in this case, we'll just demark as those who go under the symbol of serpent, which is an S, both directions. Number 8, octagon of death. Okay? So they're playing out a role. People need to understand that all of the occult mysticism is about archetypes and about individuals playing out roles. And each number is an archetype. So if you understand one number, and you understand, actually if you understand all the numbers, then you know how to guide your way around time like a clock. You have all the wheels of time so that you understand how to navigate, and when there's warnings of certain things, like they say the Egyptians used the pentagram as a warning symbol because it was symbolized by Anubis and Iraq and all the other gods that represent that. And when the sky was pointing towards this particular star system, they knew that the Nile was going to flood, which meant bad news for everyone. So what happens is that these initiations that these individuals are involved in, what we're going to be doing in the movies is we're going to be showing not only when they got initiated in movies, we're also going to show what the symbol is related to that and what the whole agenda of that group is. This is very important information to have compressed, because what we do have is we have a lot of individuals that have knowledge, but the knowledge, even some of my past knowledge, has been everywhere. But now it's time to get it into a nice curriculum and a system that allows us to be able to know whether any of us are here or not, whether I'm here or not, exactly what's going on by reading the code of this matrix. So as we were talking about this reality, what it does is that it uses all of these external electronic things to allow us to be able to do what we should be doing naturally when we're connected to the earth. So a person uses a telephone, a person uses a television, a person uses all these different devices every time they want to do something that their psyche should really be doing. And that puts them into a reality, not actuality. And then what actuality is what people are calling the spirit world. It's a realm that stays slightly out of the visual perception of most people who do not have activation, the people who are not vibrating at a higher frequency in order to turn on the crown chakra communication system and the frontal lobe communication system, and also the eye, soul, sun interface system, the photonic interface system. If these are not turned on, but all these are turned on, meaning the ones that are below, are the dancing system of communication, which only gets to a certain kind of being. And you have the sexual communication, which only gets to a certain kind of being. But this is still all below your navel, which is the midpoint of the cosmic universe. It's below here, so thus it corresponds to lower things. They're elementals. They make up the building blocks of what we really are. So people should understand that they're believing and worshiping in something that corresponds to what's below the waist. And as the serpent corresponds with the male penis, if one is communicating on a dimension where the only thing that is being communicated is something of a sexual nature, this is where the communication is. It doesn't mean anything negative or positive about the dimension other than you understand where you are. The fact of the matter is that when you have your own location system and it tells you where you are in time, where you arrived, and what you need to do, then you have a meaning of life. And this starts to fuel and give you energy. Because the subconscious mind doesn't know everything until it's connected to the sources that know everything. What the subconscious mind does is it knows everything that you've done here in this particular segment. So oftentimes when the subconscious mind gathers all the information that it needs to gather, or what it thinks it needs to gather, it wants to go into a decline cycle after that so that it can see what's next. But I come to tell you people that there's so much information still available here on this planetary system that can get an individual into conscious immortality, then that gives them more of a reason to want to be here and activate it and do different things. And so that's what the earth is suffering from, is not having this information. So these people that are actually initiated, it's important to uncover what they're doing because they're actually breaching psychic security of the universe here on Earth. And that is an infraction of the universal law. So we cite them on that, and we now will bring forth the proper authorities to deal with that. So what this trance is all about is that if you understand anything about deeper levels of mysticism, what it talks about is that the power of the jinn are to transmute. It's another race of beings in many cases, and some are humans that have passed on from this life but have pledged allegiance and made allegiance with other entities while they were here. That this whole race of beings which are far more numerous than the earth, because jinn live longer than men, as they say. So this simply means that the lifespan of a human on earth is nothing like a spirit on the other realm. That lifespan is a totally different, because it's longer. It's all about, in this case, how long it takes to decay a soul. Because on this world, it's about how long does it take to decay flesh before one has to exit. In that world, it's how long does it take to decay the first layer of spirit. And then one keeps passing into these world after world. But there was a higher level of teaching and knowledge that allowed us to understand how to ascend rather than descend. And there's many individuals that would rather descend because it's like sliding down a hill on a cardboard box. It's very simple and even fun, as it seems. And to ascend is about climbing, and it's about getting stronger, and it's about sweating, and it's about calluses and all these different things that later on, once you get to the top and you breathe the air or the essence that's there, you realize how much it was worth. And you also realize why never to descend again, why never to go down, because of how hard it takes to get back out. So that's the facts here, is that one of the lessons playing out here is people understanding exactly how hard it is to get out of this, but allowing it to strengthen you, and then understanding how powerful and how magnificent you really are with that energy and with that intellect. And if something is telling you that it doesn't want you to obtain this, but yet it's supposed to be from a higher state of species and graduated beings, then they're lying. Because any higher state of graduated beings will want to contribute that information to everyone in their society and in their groups and in their nation and etc. so that everyone could continuously grow rapidly if their knowledge and information was really worth anything. The thing is that the earth, to many of the wise people that have had the opportunity to be here or still here and passing through, etc., is vast with knowledge, because you have all these different species and races, from animals to insects to things under the microscope to things in the sea, that has not even really been discovered by yourself. Because remember, no one else can really discover it for you, and that's what we were talking about with the TV. The TV is the one doing the programming, and it switches places. The person switches places, and they become the robot. And when they become what needs to be interacted on before it gives out some type of output. So now one has to switch their life back around to go out and to discover it for themselves, because when you don't discover it for yourself, you can't have the feeling and the essence that's associated with that discovery. And so there's nothing that can substitute it. It's, oh well, like some people say, well, I can't get out. Well, I guess it may be another lifetime. You have to summon enough energy and to know that there's a difference between reality and actuality. There is a spiritual world here. I've seen it. I can get others into the path, and so the proper path so that they can also see it. But the fact of the matter is that it's here. It's been here. Where we're at is all senses turned off. The reality with Tron here and all the electrons or the electricity. They built a world that they're on top of another world, but they're all still here. See, don't get it confused, people. The real world is here next to your Tron-based world. It's not one is out of view. But the real world is nature. The real world is trees. The real world are animals. Anything that is an animate object with life. Okay? So this alchemy that's taking place within the money right now, because many people are definitely having the money situation going on, to understand the power of money, the money or the coin, which is another name for Cain, which is another name for king, which is another name for Khan. All these words are the same thing. There's two faces to any coin. So there was never anything for free, because it was like with these particular beings, if they offered you something, they were very sneaky. So they had something that they wanted to get from you in return. And many people did not question that at all because they were looking for protection from these beings. Like, that's why cities were formed, is because people started needing protection from none other than these beings. So many of them enslaved humanity just in the recent history, not across the galaxy, that we can get into that story at any point in time, but this is what happened in our locale Earth, and there's a lot of residue that's still here and visible for us to see that had happened. And these were serpent-type beings. But the interesting part about this is that many people heard about the serpent, especially in their Christian teaching, but they don't realize who's teaching them that is none other than the serpent themselves, because the word Javeh has always meant serpent. Always. It's Hebrew. And so that's why people that are American, they don't get it. Because they are not Hebrew. They don't speak Hebrew. They started off with the language of this God, which is the language of 26. English language is 26 letters. 2 plus 6 is 8. Here we go again. Okay, what is Yahweh? Yahweh is the cube. It's a cubic stone. They love to call the Kaaba. Okay? So with this cube has been placed in people's mind, the cube of death. And it's made them think they have limitations because they squared the circle now. Squared around a person's mind, the spirit field. And so what happens is that when that gets in the mind, it's only a matter